Hello, how's it going?
Hey, how are you, Anna?
I'm very well. How are you keeping?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
It's
It's
absolutely roasting here in Ireland.
is it? No way. It's like raining here now. I went for a
Is
beautiful
it?
walk though. Yeah. It's nice to go for a walk in the rain from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
I'm glad we finally were able to like get it together.
Few
Sort it out.
technical difficulties.
I know, but it's always like that, isn't it? It's just new,
Yeah.
new, new experiences, new learnings.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm really excited about this weekend coming up, and that's essentially what we're here to kind of have a little pre kind of chat about, and just get into some of the really lovely stuff that we'll be doing essentially, and to kind of pick your brains as well over all that you know when it comes to yoga therapy, and I'll add in my 2 cents on
Good.
other stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's get started. I guess I'd love to ask you, and I'd say this is something that comes up quite a lot, just in terms of what is the real difference between yoga, a standard yoga class, so you'd go to your gym or yoga studio, and then yoga
Mm.
therapy. So what is
Mm.
your sort of take on that?
Yeah, well, so there's a few major kind of differences. One is that obviously yoga class is more public, right? So it's a public thing where some classes you can just walk straight in off the street. Other classes, obviously, you have to signed up. So it's much more public thing. You're with people. It's communal. Now there can be yoga therapy in which it is directed towards conditions, but you'd have maximum of 6 people within that group if you had an ongoing yoga therapy group. And so that's one major difference. And in that sense, yoga therapy is confidential and discreet, but doesn't have that communal element usually. So it's one-to-one. Then there's this aspect of the relationship between the teacher and the client. So in most yoga classes, you will have a sense of your students. You know their names, you might know where they live, you'll know if they have sort of any major health issues that they have decided to tell you. But you may not know much more than that. In a therapeutic setting, you're getting to know your client very well. So the relationship, the therapeutic relationship, becomes quite in depth and intimate, I guess. Also, we say that yoga classes are unidirectional. So that means I'm the teacher and you're the student, and I'm giving directions, and hopefully you're able to follow those directions. And then usually what happens is people go home and they forget about it. They just go on with their lives. Whereas yoga therapy is very much bi-directional. So the client is really as involved as the therapist in the moving forward, let's say, towards the goals. So for example, and as the relationship goes on, the client is more and more involved as they get to know yoga a lot more. So yeah, that's really it. I mean, for example, like I might give it a practice, and then it's up to the client to go home and do that, and then come back and really give their feedback and keep giving their feedback. And I noticed that after a while, clients will come and they'll be the ones saying where they need to go, and I know then that there's something really sinking in and it's starting to work, because they're actually beginning to know themselves better and know their needs and know what practices they need. And I guess in the beginning, the yoga therapist is really leading that. And yeah, yoga therapy is very much, it's in the name, it's therapeutic, as in we're usually trained to be working. There's extra training involved in working with mild to serious and acute and chronic illness.
Yeah.
So whereas in yoga teaching, there may not be that training. Obviously, if someone is a doctor and they're also a teacher, they will have the training, but within the teacher trainings, there may not be that extra training. Yeah. So they're kind of the main differences, I would say. And obviously, sorry, that in yoga therapy, the practice is based around the person. So within the relationship, as the relationship evolves, the therapist gets to know the client very well on all the different levels of being: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual. And they are kind of developing a practice that is very, very specific to that person. And so in that way, your practice is bespoke, I guess, is the word for it. And a very good way to kind of integrate yoga into daily life.
That's really awesome. I love that. Yeah, I guess because I have a massage therapy background as well, I'm kind of informed by that in the way that I teach yoga as well. So I've always sort of felt that yoga is very therapeutic, and we should kind of treat it as such. But that's such a lovely way to work so closely and one-on-one with an individual. And yeah, because we hear this a lot, like really listen to your body. You're your own greatest teacher. But at the same time, it's so hard to get out of the mentality of, like, I guess in the West, we just have this just goal orientated. We want to achieve a certain thing. And it's hard to truly listen to the body when you're like, okay, I'm trying to do this thing that I'm being told to do and everybody else in this class can do. So I should be able to, it's hard to really listen to the body. So if you have this beautiful opportunity to be one-on-one in a therapeutic sort of fashion.
And I think it gives that, because I guess what you're talking about is that quality of discernment, isn't it? Like just being able to discern, which takes a long time actually to develop, and is sort of a lifelong kind of practice really of discerning what's right and what's wrong. And I guess for people with chronic illness, it's actually really important for them to practice properly. It is really, really important because they may not have that discernment, and it's difficult to have it. As I said, it takes years to develop it, and it is important for them to have a lot of guidance.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is that I will often encounter people who have been told to go to yoga by their physician or GP, and I'm like, that's brilliant that your GP is recommending this, but what kind of conditions do you have? And I think GPs are very inclined to, because they don't have a yoga background. Actually, obviously they're like good and well-intentioned, but like what kind of class are they sending people into? If you say generic yoga and you're like, you've got an issue that really needs minding, and you rock up into a class that's just completely inappropriate. Not because it's wrong,
exactly. And I mean, how many people have come to you and said, oh, I can't go to yoga because I'm not able to do a headstand, or I can't do yoga because I'm not able to be flexible. So most people don't quite know what it's about, and which is an issue, because GPs also sometimes don't quite know what it's about. So there's loads of scientific research to show that yoga is helpful for depression, for 117 different conditions, in fact, but not all yoga. And certain yoga is very good for certain things, and certain yoga will actually aggravate conditions. Yeah. So I think it's really important for doctors to become informed about what kind of yoga to recommend to people, and especially obviously if they've got chronic illness, that a yoga therapist is safer.
Awesome.
And you know, in America, yoga therapy now is covered under private health insurance. So it's kind of seen in the same light as chiropractic or physiotherapy.
Yeah, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll follow suit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's taking time, but I have to say, I have spoken to a lot of local doctors here in Galway, and they're really, really interested, you know. And I guess in some sense, I don't know what you think about this, but in some sense, I understand why it's slow, you know. I understand why it's slow to enter because it's so unregulated.
Yeah.
And I guess under that sort of reductive medical system, which has its benefits and its flaws, but one thing about it is that it can't bring in things that are unregulated, you know. So there can be all the scientific research on it, but if it's unregulated, then it can't be, you know, integrated into the medical system.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's, I think, really important aspect of yoga and yoga therapy.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
So you mentioned that there is 117 issues that yoga therapy can help with. Maybe you could go through just a few of those for people who might be interested. Or
Just to make it clear, it's yoga. So so there's 117 different conditions that yoga has now been scientifically proven to help. And you can find that it's Dr. Timothy O'Leary, who is a yoga therapist, a well-known yoga therapist over in the US, and he has kind of compiled this list of research. So you can just go onto his site or Google, you know, 117 conditions, and you get a PDF with all of the scientific research. And now there's a lot of scientific research going into actual yoga therapy. But I mean, it's, you know, there's all kinds of conditions. There's you know, ADHD, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, asthma, depression. Obviously, they're kind of the more obvious ones: depression, anxiety, autism, just kind of a lot of different conditions, neurological disorders, digestive disorders, lung conditions like COPD, and just really all round conditions that deal not only with the physical body, but also the mental, emotional, and energetic body, which is where really the source of a lot of chronic illness comes from. Yeah,
really, because it is that holistic idea, right? Not just going, oh, you know, when somebody says, for example, you have stomach ache, and then they're like, what did you eat, blah blah blah. It's like thinking about the overall picture. Is like, is stress causing this stomach ache? You know, there's so many layers to what could be the cause of it, and often, you know, we just jump to the symptom. And it's, if you have this broader perspective of the person, and I don't know if you take, like, I know if I'm doing a massage treatment, we do a consultation form and I keep track of people, and it sounds like you do something similar with yoga therapy.
Yeah. So we're there's an intake form, obviously, and then the first session is quite extensive. It's about an hour and a half or 2 hours long, where we're you know, seeing the posture, which obviously, you know, as well, tells so much about the way the person is functioning in their breathing. There's a breathing kind of assessment as well, and a real overall assessment of where the person is at and in all these different areas of their lives. And it's so interesting, you know. It just gets more and more fascinating. I mean, to watch the breathing, to watch the breath, and to get to know how to observe the breath is kind of like a real skill, you know, that takes time. And, you know, I'm still learning. I'll be learning for a long time. But what I notice is that the breathing is so often correlated with the complaint. You know, it's so, they're so tied together, you know. Like, for example, someone might come in with IBS, they're experiencing IBS, and for sure, they're not breathing into their stomach. For sure, the breathing down in the abdominal area will be dysfunctional. Or someone will come in and they maybe have experienced a lot of grief in their lives, and the heart is really in a lot of suffering, and it's this area that will be dysfunctional, you know. So it's just a beautiful way to work, I think, with through the breath in that way, you know, which is one aspect of yoga therapy and one way we work.
So just to give us an idea, how would you describe like an optimal breath? What does that look like in a person?
An optimal breath is, you know, so there's different ways we could tell. You might say to someone, breathe naturally, right? So that won't be overly done. And you know this as well, right? Yeah, I mean, that won't be overly done. It won't be a big, strong breath. It will be just an easy breath, kind of like, I always think of a soft tide coming in and out, a soft tide that sort of reaches down into the area of the belly and comes back up, but is not forced in any way. And then when the person is breathing deeper, then that the deep breath draws down into the belly and comes up, and you can see the rib cage expand, you can see the chest expand, you can see the collarbones here expand slightly, and that there's a lovely soft breath back out, and that these areas are kind of equally filled, if you like. There's not over trying and there's not under trying. There's just an ease of breath in and out, and that's what mostly we're working towards.
Yeah.
That, and it's incredible. It's just incredible to see when people do start breathing properly, the changes that take place, you know.
Yeah, 100%. I always love the image of like a cat or a baby sleeping, and you can see the whole organism just kind of sort of slowly expanding and retracting. It's like, and that's kind of, I guess, what I always try to emulate when I'm trying to breathe in that natural way. It's like, oh, something's gone wrong. How do I come back? Okay, channel that sleeping cat. You know?
So nice. Yeah, because animals have just this, I mean, you never, unless a cat is very old or ill, you never see a cat with bad posture, do you?
No.
You know, like, because they're always just kind of breathing properly. I guess they don't have the prefrontal cortex, you know, to kind of set their minds awry and have their breathing kind of dysfunctional, you know, and they don't have that. They're not put in chairs all day where their diaphragm is restricted, you know, so they just breathe well and they have such beautiful posture. Dogs, cats,
natural bodies.
natural bodies. And maybe that's an aspect, you know, is like this I guess our modern lifestyle is moves us away from that very innate and knowing of how to stand, how to sit, how to breathe properly.
Yeah. And I think we can get like really kind of kerfuffled about all the options there are as well. It's like, okay, you need to get like an ergonomic standing desk and this chair is going to be better for you. And there's like so much stuff, and we're just constantly like, how am I going to just like fix the issue? Like, what stuff can I add to my life to fix the issue, rather than being like, oh, maybe I just need to like get up and move more frequently, or you know, not be too bogged down by all the extra stuff. Really, it's just added.
And then sometimes it just takes the extra training as well, right? To create all that lovely elasticity in the muscles around the chest and the muscles in the diaphragm.
Yeah, it's not stuff. It's just coming back to our natural ability to tune into that, right? It's like
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
if I could ask, is there something you see quite a lot in people? Like what would be a main issue? If there's anything you notice that is like kind of predominant that you see in your practice?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it. It's the breathing. I mean, that's the kind of predominant thing, is the breathing and the posture.
Yeah.
Um, and there's breathing, there's posture. These are the initial things. They're the kind of first things that would be most obvious. And then sometimes what I find is that, well, someone might come in with an issue around anxiety, for example, and we address the breathing and the posture and a lot of different practices that they can use to self-soothe. And after a few weeks, when the anxiety has died down, hopefully, they're able to look a little bit deeper into what might be the cause of that. And so what I often find is that we're going deeper then into the heart, and often what I find is there's a feeling of separation. You know, they're feeling separated, and they can either be feeling separated really from themselves, separated from someone through kind of grief, or through childhood experiences, and really that's what a lot of stuff sort of boils down to, is that deeper kind of longing, I guess, for belonging.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of chronic illness can, you know, it's nice to address that aspect of it. Yeah, so that's something I see a lot of. And yeah, I guess anxiety is a big one, you know, anxiety, because chronic illness does bring, and acute illness sometimes as well, does bring with it its mental and emotional kind of baggage as well. So that is something that we're often having to work with and look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's this chain reaction, right? Whatever is in the body then affects the mind, or whatever's in the mind that affects the body. It's like sometimes you don't know what came first, and it just kind of keeps feeding back into itself if we're not addressing the root of it, right? So
exactly, yeah. And this is the thing, right? It's like getting to know yourself is about, you know, and this is the thing with yoga and with yoga therapy, is that over time there's this, the person is being helped and learning themselves how to keep self-evaluating, to see where is the source of the suffering. I mean, is it just because I stubbed my toe and now my toe is in pain, but, you know, I'm not having mental, emotional suffering? Or is there a mental, emotional suffering? Is the mind, for example, gone into sort of obsessive, cyclical kind of thinking, and therefore I'm having pains in my stomach and I'm getting IBS and things like this? So where is the source of it, and where can we kind of come to address it, let's say, which is an amazing life skill, I think, for people to learn through yoga and yoga therapy, you know, because the two can teach that. Yeah,
absolutely. One of the big things at the moment, I guess, is our sort of attention on our immune systems, right? You know, we're going through this global event where I think people feel extremely vulnerable and are perhaps taking a little bit of a closer look at the ways in which they go about their lives and how they can maybe implement changes that will boost their immunity. And I think yoga and yoga therapy are beautiful ways to do that. And I was wondering if maybe you could share some of your knowledge into sort of how that is, how it would help.
Well, I mean, it kind of helps. It's such a kind of broad spectrum of helping, you know. Like I said, there are these different sheets. We have these different types of body, right? The physical, I keep mentioning it, the physical, the mental, emotional, the energetic. the discernment, how we discern what's good and bad for us, and then obviously the deeper kind of spiritual elements. And if we can kind of be watching out for all those things, they reduce stress. So like dysfunction at any of those levels can cause stress, you know, and stress punches holes in the immune system. We know that. So at the moment, for example, there's a lot of separations, and there some people feel it, some people don't. Some people feel it a lot more than others. Some people are a lot more separated. But there is a sense of being apart. So there might be that element that can be addressed, you know, through finding other ways to connect, for example. And then obviously physically and energetically, we can work with asana and breath work to literally strengthen the lungs, the heart, and the immune system, through movement, through functional breathing. This is really, really, really important at the moment, this kind of functional breathing, to maintain stability throughout this unstable time, inner stability, and also to develop a sense of empowerment around this virus, because it does attack the lungs. And what we can do is actually strengthen our lungs, and also have that sense that if we do have a time of breathlessness, if we are feeling breathless, if we did happen to get it, that there are so many spaces in the lungs we can breathe. We don't just have to breathe up here, but we can breathe down into our diaphragms. We can breathe into the muscles in the back. We can breathe into the side. And this gives a sense of real empowerment with regards that breathing aspect of them.
I think that word is so important, empowerment, you know, because there is such an element of fear that is surrounding all of this, and whether you're directly affected by it or you're just feeling the impact of kind of the community of fear that is sort of prevalent at the moment, it's to kind of come back to yourself and feel your ability to take ownership over your own health, and to build strength within yourself, that you can also then be more able to help outwards, and be a part of a more positive effect on your community as well, right? Just by feeling that empowerment in yourself. And
then it's also the aspect as well of Vikara, right? It's the lifestyle choices that we made, and what you were talking about earlier on with this discernment about, you know, I guess discernment about what we are eating, so it's not just like your yoga practice, your asana practice, your breathing practice, but you know, supplements, food, being out in the sun, things like that, that are going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. And the space to do it in. I think we were chatting the other day about this, like what it is that this is like. We're in this moment of pause in between whatever normal was before and whatever normal we are headed towards, but it's this opportunity to cultivate those practices and to kind of reshape the way you are doing life, right? So that's I think super important.
It's a great time to do it, you know.
100%.
And there is time, you know, and it's like, it's better to do it now and have it for when you really need it, you know, because when we are in major crises, you don't want to learn. It's not the time to learn something new, right?
Yeah, there's a great Irish quote, "Ní hé lán guithe lán a scoilg," which is like, you know, the day of the wind is not the day to touch the roof. Beautiful,
exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you try to learn something when you're too stressed out. Your brain isn't in it, you know, your mind isn't in it. So
so true. I think that leads us in really nicely to just discuss a few of the elements that we're going to be working with on Saturday at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm just really excited to be doing this with you, Anna, Maria, and you know, we've never done a retreat together, and actually, interestingly, we met online.
Yeah.
Beginning of this whole coronavirus. You're in London, I'm in Galway, but you're from Inishmaan.
Yeah.
Side in Galway, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's lovely the way we've met, and
I know. But we went to school together, and we're not together. We've been on these kind of parallel paths in some kind of weird way, and now we're like interesting.
Yeah, 2 years behind me. We just discovered. It's just, I think it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to say I'm really excited to do this with you.
Yeah, me too. So we're gonna basically go into a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, but working with the practices as well. Sorry, the stuff that we've been talking about essentially. So yeah, just ways in which we can use really practical tools. You're back. to
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Just integrate that sense of empowerment in ourselves, in literally empowerment in action.
Right? Sorry, I'm just going to tell that person not to call me back. That's why it went off. What were you saying? I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh yeah, we're going to be going into the really practical and simple, accessible tools we have literally in our bodies that we can use at any point during any day. And how we can use those to cultivate a sense of empowerment in our body.
Exactly, and the practice will be recorded as well, so you know, can come back and they can look over it again, which is great. So we're going to be going through the immunity. You'll be talking through the immunity and kind of the stress response, and then I'll be talking about the method we have in yoga for self-evaluation, which can be really helpful for people to kind of be able to see what areas they need to address. And then you'll be doing your asana practice.
Yes, so we will be doing some yoga, but it's like really just gentle, and I think really accessible for anyone, you know, as well. Just some of the main principles are just again coming to that kind of feeling of natural breath in the body, and moving in a way that like helps to spread energy through our body. So it's coming back to that natural body, like that a sort of metaphor of the cat, the breathing, moving, living body, you know. My teacher always used to say that let the body breathe, so that we feel that through the whole of the body and system. And then you'll be
and then I'm going to be doing some breath work, but I don't want to do complicated stuff, you know. It's just going to be breath work where we're going to be exploring all these different areas, the lungs, that we can breathe, to bring in vitality, to stabilize our emotions and our mental faculties, and to help us to feel empowered around our breathing and around feeling healthy and feeling safer at this time. Yeah.
And then I'll take us through a meditation, also just this kind of self-inquiry and more delving into that. And I think meditation is just, it's such a powerful tool, and like you feel the effects instantaneously, but also as you develop the practice, you'll see it just kind of ripples outwards into your entire life. And it's just beautiful. I just can't praise it enough.
I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, and then I'm going to be bringing us through a sort of another kind of meditation, but it has a different focus, and that is to create this, or not even create because it's already there, but to link in back into this sort of web of energy and belonging that we all have with each other through the heart center. So kind of addressing that sense of separateness and dealing with kind of sensing belonging even in physical separation. Yeah.
And then we're going to be lucky enough to hear you do some mantra.
Yeah. Oh yeah, then we'll do a little bit of, so we'll all sing together, which is just beautiful, you know.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know that much about mantra, maybe could you explain what it is? And I mean, it doesn't really even need any explanation when you're doing it, you feel it, but what is there? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, a mantra can be in any language, right? But there are certain languages that are so old and ancient that they carry a certain weight with them. So of course I can have a mantra in English, and often people do, and in yoga therapy we'd often give someone an English mantra if it feels right for them. But there are mantras in Sanskrit, that would be in, you know, within yoga tradition, and then Pali, which is Buddhist tradition, and then there's obviously Latin mantras, which is in more kind of Christian traditions, and they carry they can be, you can have a chant that is very long, or you can have a chant that's just short, a small short chant, which is what we'll do a simple chant. But they are working in order to, on different levels really, but man means the mind, mano, and tra means discipline. So it's to discipline the mind is one aspect, and we can keep repeating a mantra in order to really kind of settle and stabilize a mind that is anxious, or feels a little out of control, or is has a very negative worldview or anything like this. We can kind of use a mantra and sort of replace those thoughts. It's not that those thoughts don't have to be dealt with at some stage, you know, I mean, therapy is great and those thoughts do need to be dealt with, but a mantra is a way in which we don't always have to be dragged along by these thoughts. We can kind of really focus ourselves. It's also an amazing way to start the day singing, and to start the day singing something beautiful, something deeply, deeply meaningful, and something that carries the weight of sometimes thousands of years of sort of human consciousness repeating this mantra is very, very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's something about using our voice in that way, I think, as well, and the reverberation on a physical level. There's something very freeing about it. And I think no matter whether you think you can sing or not, you know, I think we all enjoy that. You know, we're musical creatures. I think music has been present throughout our entire history since somebody learned how to like bang on a stone, you know. We're just
exactly. Yeah, I mean, so many people have been told they can't sing, and so they don't sing. And the great thing about chanting is that you don't have to be able to sing, but you might discover you can. But no one is listening to you, you know. It's not about that.
Yeah,
you can be leading chants and really not, and be tone deaf. It doesn't matter, you know.
but you certainly are not. You're a beautiful singer. It's lovely to hear you.
So yeah, I'm so looking forward to it, Anna.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, 9 o'clock on Saturday until 1 o'clock, and we do have a couple little breaks laid out in between, and so it'll be just a really holistic kind of practice. I feel like everything will be in there, and to be just really to enjoy our bodies and our voices and our breathing, right? It's just super simple.
Yeah.
It's also free for all NHS workers and Irish healthcare workers, which we're really pleased to be able to offer as well. So yeah, anybody who wants to share this on to anybody who feels like they would benefit from it as well, really grateful we're really happy to have you there for sure. And yeah, so looking forward.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. So yeah, if people want to book a ticket, you can just go through the event page, which I guess.
Yeah, it's on
Yeah,
both of our Facebook pages and your web page. And do you want
exactly.
me to say your web page and I'll say mine? That could be.
Yeah, it's www.yogaroots.ie. Yoga Roots, yeah.
And mine is www.awaytolivewell.com. We're also on Instagram and we do all kinds of nice stuff on there on a regular basis. So yeah, follow.
Yeah. Okay, and YouTube.
Me too, yeah. We're all over the place.
Okay, listen, Anna, I'll see you very soon.
Very soon, yes, indeed.
And thank you so much.
Take care of yourself. See you soon.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.